Welcome back to part 2 of our little mini-series following Milligan, Bowman and Chef, along with their new recruit Onesan, on their journey as they attempt to escape Rimworld. If you are new here, I'm a complete beginner in this game, and my goal is to find my way off this planet. We seem to be onto something good with this group, so if you haven't seen part 1 already, I'll link it somewhere above. It would be ideal to watch it before watching this episode. But back to the action. Last episode was a bit of a slog. We got off to a good start, but had a 10-day span of chaos where I was just getting by. We left off getting some food stocked and the sanctuary cleaned up, and we're now somewhere around day 25. It's time to start playing around with the little manual priorities, giving our survivors more task-specific job roles. We started off by putting Onesan as our warden due to his passion for social. He's pretty slow at getting around, so anything that means travelling a lot just isn't going to help us. We also made him our chief in crafting, tailoring and smithing due to his passions. For now, with still no cook, Bowman will be taking the reins on handling cooking and hunting. Chef will look after growing, mining and plant cutting, and Milligan will focus on construction and be the backup for any other skills where required. Chef was back out doing his new job, filling the grow zone with more rice to keep everybody fed. But once that is complete, I've marked up a few mining spots for him to get to work on. Bowman was back out on the hunt, as I want to make sure we have a good food supply going forward and not have a period like we did last episode with no food. One issue I did run into is the coolers of the fridge cutting off. I suspect this is because they are hooked up directly to the wind turbines, and as our tips keep telling me, I need batteries. We've also set up an electric tailor bench, so I decided to run some conduit up to it and get it working. Then hopefully Onesan can get to work on the elusive parkers for the winter. I did spot Onesan doing some recruitment on Stephen in his cell, and Milligan got to work on the conduit. The next day Bowman was done with the hunting and in the kitchen being the butcher, and now we had a great supply of meat and rice to be cooked. Things were on the up. There was no cooking going on though, as the stove was out of wood. This is probably why the workshop area still hasn't been constructed. I had also added batteries to the research table, and Bowman got to work on this so we could finally store some power for when the turbines are down. We finally came across the schedule tab where we can set our survivors' time to complete their work and sleep. I left it pretty open, just that bedtime was 10 PM for everyone. As the power was now onto the tailor bench, we set some bills for 4 parkers ready for the winter, and set some new clothes up for Onesan as he's complaining about his tattered apparel. Bowman decided to throw a party today. Not ideal as we have work to do, but it gives them a little boost, so we'll let them off this time. Onesan had his first dementia outbreak at the party, so began just roaming around, and before I knew it, everybody was back to work. There were further complaints from Chef about the recreation, so we put in the plans for a new chess table to play on. Milligan began work straight away, and I was a little taken back by how long this actually took. She started at 1 AM in the morning and finished about 14 hours later, and by this point the need for wood was pretty high as every torch was off. Chef was sent to do his job cutting trees, and as our constructor, Milligan decided to finish off the workshop area. We were finally beginning to get on the food with 61 meals in the freezer, but obviously Randy sent us a solar flare to shut down the electricity. Just in time for us to finish up the research on the batteries, so off I went and put 3 of them down in the freezer. After a day though, they had collected no power, so I felt the need to add in a 3rd wind turbine. Also, remember last episode when I mentioned I'd not connected up the first one we built? Well, it still hasn't been connected up. As things were going so well, we decided to splash out and add in some wall lamps. I found them quite aesthetically pleasing compared to the wall torches. I got a little trigger happy though and ended up putting them everywhere. I also got around to wiring up the 3rd wind turbine for that boost in power. Then had a caravan of traders who had some survivors for sale. I did want to buy them, but the issue was the shortage of silver. We began our 2nd research and went with smithing as this unlocks armour and machining. Milligan got straight to work after installing the majority of the lights, and Onesan finished the first parker on the tailor bench, which Milligan went straight over and claimed. The hops that we found in the last episode finally rotted away. I still have no idea what they're used for, and after another day I realised that the 3rd wind turbine isn't working as it was blocked by trees in its zone. So we planned to have them cut down, and we also finished the smithing research. Now we had the trees cut, we finally saw some electricity going into the batteries. Just another little win for us, and another feather in my Rimworld cap. There was another raid, this time from the Crocan League. They sent in Guatan, but he was no match for our sandbag walls. He also died, so there was no chance of recruitment. We did have some fantastic news though. Milligan had asked Bowman to marry her, so after some searching around the menus, we finally found the marriage spot and added it outside in the front porch area. We also added some concrete just to make it look that little more official. Next up was another raid from the Ash Pikes, but this time it was the wife of our colonist chef. How they ended up in the opposite groups I'm not sure, but it said they would still attack each other, so instead of letting her prepare, we headed straight over to begin the short fight. Obviously Chef got a huge debuff from this, but it was counteracted by the hyperweave that was dropped from a transport pod. I also realised I said that like I knew exactly what it was. The truth is, I have no idea. We began our research into machining, which unlocks frag grenades and Molotov cocktails. I then realised I missed 2 pieces of conduit under our coolers, which is probably what was causing me my issues. I also got around to adding a few floor lamps to some of the rooms, just to lighten up the place a little bit more. Chef was getting miserable, obviously due to the -20 debuff after his wife had just been killed, but he was chilly, so I gave him one of the parkas we pulled from a dead body. To my surprise, this infuriated him even further as the quality was poor. He did finally break a day or so later and went off to hide in his bedroom. Now that we have the new lighting in the base and 3 full batteries, I decided I was going to deconstruct all of the wall lamps. This is when Milligan gets around to it. We also began adding in heaters to the bedrooms as everybody's moods were a little low due to the cold weather. Obviously winter was finally here and Onesan isn't producing parkas as we expected he would. I did give him the first heater though to warm up, so hopefully this makes him work a little quicker. I've also really expanded my conduit network throughout the sanctuary, but I'm sure we will need to upgrade down the line. We were gifted a free dinner courtesy of Randy. Onesan finally finished up another parka to cheer up Chef. Pretty much as soon as it was dropped, Chef was on his way in to collect it. Chef headed out to do some trading with the visiting caravan. They had some pretty cool items in stock, but again, Chef has been complaining about recreation, so I bought a telescope for them to try something new. As everyone slept that night, we were offered a quest to help a wandering drifter called Lips. She is too frantic to offer me any further information, so I have no idea about her skills, but I'm always gonna take on additional survivors. To my joy, as Lips arrived in the area, I found out she had a high passion for cooking, which is just what we need. She hadn't even made it back to the sanctuary before we changed her priorities, just to handling and cooking, along with the obvious hauling and cleaning. Bowman now gets a well-earned break from the kitchen. She was followed by Zabrida from the Crotchka League, but he decided to prepare his raid first, so we put some plans in for a base extension. With Lips, I now need more bedrooms and the wooden structure is becoming a little worry, so we plan to move to limestone. Again, me being stuck in my construction days, I didn't realise that Zabrida had started his raid, so we had to wake everybody up and send them outside. I was tactical with this though, as I headed around the opposite side towards the visiting caravan, and as expected they took care of business for me. We did gain some free medical supplies and another ranged weapon for Chef. Milligan finally started work on the base expansion, which by the way will pass through Onesan's bedroom, but he's going to get a new shiny one so it'll all be worth it. As we now have a full-time chef in Lips, it was also time to give her an upgraded stove, so we planned to install the electric one. It doesn't seem like food is going to be an issue for some time now, but I'm sure Randy will ruin that. Due to the expansion, Onesan also directed his attention to making limestone bricks. Milligan finally got an electric stove in, and just look at the stacks of meat we have now. 97 meals in the freezer, nearly 700 meat and 200 rice, with more to come from the grow zone. We even began processing fine meals to continue raising the spirits of the group. With more time on his hands, Bowman was at the research table a lot more, this time finishing the research into machining, and Bowman began to research gunsmithing. Talking about our construction crew though, Milligan ended up with malaria. Not ideal for us as she's a big part of the group, so she had to be sent to bed and tended to by Lips. Lucky for us, we have Chef ready to jump in and take over construction, and after a few days her immunity was at 80%, so it looked like she would be safe. Due to Bowman's high level in intellectual, he's already finished the gunsmithing research, so next up was blowback operation. Without realising, Milligan was back on her feet and back to construction, and as I wanted to get Stephen recruited, I started looking into his moods. He seemed really bothered about his ratty apparel, but I have no idea how to give him clothes. Any ideas? And finally, Milligan had finished the new base expansion. We just needed to put some flooring in now, and yes, we are going for the limestone floor to match. Work had to be stopped though, as today was the big day for Bowman and Milligan to get married. All the survivors gathered at our fashionable meeting spot to see the happy couple tie the knot. Milligan got to work down the aisle, and just like that I finally married 2 people in Rimworld. Not that I was planning for this to happen, but it just kinda happened. But after everybody spent the next few hours just chatting away, we got back to work. Bowman finished the blowback operation, then with his high mood following his wedding, he was blessed with another inspiration, allowing him to shoot more accurately for the next 8 days. So obviously we sent him out to do more hunting and take full advantage. We did get struck by our first raid in a little while though, and this time it looks like the difficulty has ramped up. There was Jet and Mushinto from the nation of Natebum, but this time with some serious firepower. Moshito was welding a revolver and Jet had hand grenades, which were pretty scary. As they were preparing to attack, I decided to build a wall to block them off to a certain point and add in some spike traps. But before I could start work, they were already on their way to us, so I drafted everybody to the sandbags. Jet threw in a hand grenade, and I've never panicked so much in this game as I tried to draft my team away from the blast. Unfortunately, Milligan didn't quite get out in time and took the brunt of the explosion. This seemed to enrage Bowman, who hit 2 clean shots with a rifle and killed Jet instantly. Then Mushinto went down to some hand-to-hand combat from Chef. In all honesty, that was a pretty scary raid. We had a few injuries, but now we have another gun in our arsenal, along with hand grenades. Milligan did take quite the hit from the grenades, as the next day she was a medical emergency, extreme blood loss and a shredded head and torso. Obviously her husband Bowman was incapable of helping her, so again we had to pull Chef out of bed to do the doctoring. Again, with our injuries, we were given the unfortunate news that a stallion had gone mad and was attacking everybody. We stupidly opened the door, and with lips incapable of violence, it was effectively Bowman versus the stallion. I did survive though once we moved Bowman back so he could use the rifle and let Onesan take the brunt of the damage. Just as that had finished, I saw the message that a warg was hunting our pet cat Snuffles. It's safe to say I was not going out to save him, so rest in peace, Snuffles. After a hectic 2 days, I started a further research into guns with gas operation, but with everybody bar Chef injured, that didn't get started just yet. Onesan did get back on his feet that night and finally broke Steven's resistance, so recruitment will start very soon. We are near to doubling the squad, and that will bring us a full-time researcher going forwards. The next day, everybody did get back to work though, and that evening we had another transport pod crash with a digger called Zlata. Just in time as our expansion was nearly complete, so as you can guess, we threw down another bed to put up and headed over to rescue her. But once again, I'd left it too late and she was already dead. Once I asked Steven to join the group and he quickly accepted. He's been locked away in the prison for a good month now, and that finally gives us a full-time researcher. He does have a low level in intellectual, but he has a passion for it, which will help. As Milligan is working on our new safety wall and trap, Sanctuary is looking pretty strong and ready to really push on. Now everybody has their specific jobs, I feel like we're in a good position and ready to try out some new stuff in the next episode. As always, if you're enjoying this little mini-series, drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one. I'm JPGZ, good night and goodbye.